Here is another advancement, another great example of how this experiment, this ongoing experiment about when you focus on something, let's say you have a group of numbers that you just meditate on all the time, you're just thinking about them all day and all night, and you focus on them for years, and how the reality starts to shape around it. And in this case, it's with the infinity pi matrix. And recently, I had the idea of translating it into Hebrew. What does that mean? When you read numbers, typically you're reading them from left to right. But what if you read them from right to left? So it's you can imagine it's a lot of work to rework the whole infinity pi matrix. But the first row, I was able to do it, and I'm seeing that because I encountered a phone number. Well, first of all, I'll read you. I've committed the first 30 digits of pi to memory, and then this new concept is called the pi, pei aleph yud pi, and that has an acronym for many things. It's Ya'er Panav Yitanu from Psalm 67, or Poseach Es Yadecha. There's a few different acronyms, but pei aleph yud. It's also I believe it's a holy name. Pei aleph, or it's connecting to. Anyway, I'm getting off track. It's called a pi Matritza Einsוף, and that's the Hebrew way of saying infinity pi matrix. Einsוף, it means infinite. Matritza, it's like Matritza, something. Matrix. And pi Matritza Einsוף Shura Echad. And just check this out. This is the regular infinity pi matrix. 314, 159, 265, 358, 979, 323, 846, 264, 338, 327. Okay? But the pi Matritza Einsוף is, and you're reading it from right to left and reversed. So but you're reading it as it's kind of like both. It's going right to left. However, the numbers in them are left to right. It's like going like this and like this at the same time. Basically, what you're doing is you're going 413, 951, 562, 853, 979, 323. Since those are palindromes, those are the only numbers that stay the same. 979, 323, 648, 462, 833, 723. Now, the only reason I decided to make this video is that I'm seeing these correlations happen. It's like they're starting to. Okay, this goes into. I'll go off on another tangent. This idea, so many tangents, but basically, there's a Kabbalistic concept. It's the Arizal explained it. Lurianic Kabbalah, basically, but other Mekubalim talk about it. But it's the idea of the worlds of Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim that are derived from the story of Jacob and Lavan, when he did this whole thing with the flocks. He was able to have them, to breed them. Basically, he did something, long story short, that made his flocks a tremendous amount, and the other flocks that Lavan had were like nothing, and they were just very little. But from this, there were two different types of animals. There was ringed. It's like an animal that has, I'm not sure what the color patterning was on the animal, but the point is that when it gets to the legs, there's like a ring around them. They have a ring around the legs. It's like akudim is like akod. It's tied, like when you tie an animal, like whatever. They're tied around the legs. So if it's ringed around the legs, so that's one stage. It's like a conceptual Kabbalistic idea of lights and vessels of how the creative process of how it happens. So you have akudim, and then you have nekudim, means like animals that have spot of dots on them. You know, they have their color in their skin. They have like different dots or points. Nekudim is actually points, but it's like there's spots or dots. Okay, and then we get to the final state, and that's like, at least the way I understand it, they're like random points in life. Like in the chaos theory, there's all kinds of random points. It's like if you look in life, it's just you look at everything. There's so much data. It's just they're all just points, and they're seemingly not related, not connected. They're just thousands of just points. But then you have the final state, which is brudim. Brudim is they're like, if you look at an animal and you want to see that it's called patterned, or maybe you want to call it, I thought to say splotches or blotches, or blotch I think is a little bit crude, but like if you look at a pattern of the skin color of an animal, they're not dots, they're not lines, they're not rings. It's kind of like a pattern where they're patches. That's a good word, patches. Kind of like you have a patch of brown and it patches into a little bit of white, and then it patches into. That's patched. That's a different idea, and that's an idea of where you're starting from these disjointed points. They're all these different points all over the place, but after a while, the points they start to bleed. In my mind, I thought that was a good way of conceptualizing it. When it starts to bleed, if you and you put water into something, and then the color starts to bleed into the other color, what happens is that it's no longer really a separate point. You start to see how it connects to the other points around it, and then it's like you really see. So the idea of bleeding, or patching, or patterning, I think you get the idea by now, is that the things that you thought were separate are not really separate. You're starting to see how they really connect. They actually bleed into. That's the brudim, and I think that's the stage where it's for me the most difficult to see how all these is jointed, but it's necessary. And that's the final stage. When it gets here, it's a finished product. Once it gets into brudim, it's already creative. Okay, so all that to say that I'm applying that Kabbalistic framework to the creative process within the infinite number pi, and I'm seeing the brudim phase happen now. And I'll explain why. The infinity pi matrix, just the first line I was focused on the most, and the second line not as much, the third line not as much, and as it goes down it's less and less. But anyway, so if you reverse 3.14159265358 979-323-846-264 338-327, you'll get the Hebrew version where you're reading from right to left, but it's this 413-951-562-853-979-323 648-462-833-723. And the reason why that's so meaningful is that last night I received a phone number, and the first digits were actually in just totally straight, 562. But I also pay attention to the time that I start the work in the day. You know, the minute that I start my work in the day is a very important minute, and it's a minute to remember for the rest of the day and for weeks to come and years to come. That minute, if I started on March 21st, 2024, if I started at 9:51 a.m., which I did, that's going to have ramifications in 5 years from now. That's the thought behind it. And so that's what I did, 951. And so look, 562 in the infinity pi matrix is right next to 951. I got a 562 number last night. I started work today at 951. But last night, I was listening to a video where they were talking about pi, and they were talking about Solomon's brazen sea, I believe. I think it's in 2 Kings. 2 Kings 7:23. No. It's 1 Kings. It's talking about the brazen sea Solomon's he made a big washing basin that was 30 cubits around. Let's see here. Molten sea, yeah, it's First Kings. But the point is that it's 723. First Kings, it says he made a molten sea, 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was round about 5, and it was 30 cubits all around. So they want to accuse the Bible of not being accurate. They say that the Bible is not exactly pi. It's 10, in diameter, and it's 30 all around. Okay, so maybe it's approximate. I don't know. If you want to attack something, you can attack something. In my understanding, this is pi 100%. 3.1 is very close to 3.14. It's close enough. 3.1 is close enough to 3.14. Okay, so there's probably reasons for that, but if you want to attack something, you can attack something. Okay, the point is, I think it's pi just as much. It's just as much pi as whatever. So the point is that okay, I came across that's 723, and I'll probably end up at 648 today. 648 because this was back in 2014, 648. And the only two numbers are, I think those are the connections, 723, 562, 951. And you can always build upon it. You can always add. I could always say 413. I can call someone 413. Call Steve or whatever. 833. Ben's Thursday. You can do that. You can do a lot. But the point is that there were four numbers here. 3 numbers that were exactly, without a stretch, very, very poignant.